This
I just started
conference
talking,
will
didn't I?
now be recorded.
Oh. So, welcome. Yeah, I'll do that again. Thanks for coming to our Urban Herding Clubhouse chat. And I think we've gotten great input from other members, people who have been working through, the challenges of urban herding. And so they've got things to share with everybody. And of course, you have questions you can ask. This is not formal by any means. Um, the the way it's organized is kind of going through the skill set that for each level. So we'll be looking at novice and then intermediate, advanced, and then expert. So um, just kind of so you know, and so yeah, you can advance. You can give me a slide here,
There we go.
Chris.
All right, very cool.
Chris is, the tech person, and I couldn't manage both. So thank you, Chris. I can talk, but I don't know about this sharing thing of the screen. So anyway, these are just some general things that people, who have been doing this want to share and make sure, we're all on the same page with that. And like being patient with the process and giving the dog time to develop and practice new skills because it just is going to take some time, and make sure, and when things aren't going well, we need to be revisiting foundation skills. We need to make sure they're strong, and then we may need to revisit them as the challenges get greater for them. We also want to plan on using props. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That just helps the dog be right, and that's obviously what we want. So, and again, that keeping it into small bites. We know that from training. We got to do that. We can't just go from A to Z really fast. We have to break it down. And we're always, we're looking for those moments when it gels. So um, again, we're pretty much using a marker based um, training plan here where we're marking behavior, reinforcing the position, reinforcing what the dog is doing that we want. And you'll see in some of the examples that people are using and using the remote trainers, which, I will say would work well with many dogs. Not always terriers. Just want to say that was just a personal experience of mine. But uh, for a lot of them, it's great. It gets the reinforcement where you want it, and with the timing that you want. So okay,
Okay.
we have Lucy here. No. Okay. So, kind of prerequisites to all of this um, are that the dog is able to do like the novice level. So 25 feet, be able to push a ball to you into the goal. And then that the dog has done work with around fences, turning corners, being able to maneuver the ball around those obstacles. And then the other one is the directional skills that they've needed to get novice standard and B&O title. So the basic directionals, not some of the fancier ones, but they definitely have to have foundation of that as well. So.
Right, and these are all things that came out of suggestions
What
that
people
came
had to say.
in. Right, right.
Hmm.
That-
Yeah, and it's good to just have that out there. I mean, I don't think any of this is new news to anybody, but it's good we just have that foundation of understanding.
mhm.
Chris, where are you going to take this now?
Oh, okay. All right, so we did throw in, just to keep us all on the same page, the novice task. And we have a screenshot of what the field's supposed to look at. the tasks that we look at for novice are they have to be able to bring a ball out of a pen and put it in the goal. They have to bring in two balls. There's one behind a fence that's 25 feet out and one that's behind a fence 15 feet out. And the one that's 25 feet out needs to come between the gate. And the gate is that space that's formed between fences 2 and 3. So that far ball has to come there. So that's the basic tasks for the novice level. And playing on from there, if we look at what the novice skills are, they need to be able to steer around the fences and steer out of a pen. And that's kind of just lumping together the things. I know we said, it was mentioned in the prereq that they're comfortable working around the fences and around corners. And it's not that they have to already have the skills to manipulate around them. That's part of what we have to train, but we do want them to be comfortable around those things before we start. I know I've got some dogs that they worry about the fences and pins, so we want them to be there.
And also, would you say in here, like they need to be doing it safely?
Yeah, safely, right. We want them to be
Because I mean, I think that's a little more specific training, right?
right, right. A real goal that we're doing this safely. I think a lot of things you see is we go through some of the diagrams and pictures that have been sent in. A lot of the goal is to make sure that the dog is not ramming the ball into the fence or the pen, trying to get around it. We don't want them hurting themselves. Even if they don't hurt
Mm-hmm.
themselves with one hit, if they repeatedly do it, they're putting some damage on their body. So,
Right.
trying to get them trained to do it comfortably. There's Lisa. Lisa's here now.
There's Lisa. Yeah.
Right. So there we go. And Margaret's here. I see Eric. Good. So people can
Yeah.
also talk.
Right.
Sandy's here. Tammy,
Tammy.
Kyla, folks who've put the higher level titles on their dogs for urban herding. Some of the training that we talked about is teaching the dog how to maneuver around a fence, and so this is sort of an around the clock method of teaching. We've got a fence here. If you start at the top of the diagram, there's a fence. The circle with the one end is the ball, and you and the dog face the fence and ball. You send the dog around and have them push the ball, and effectively they just push the ball straight to you. And we're talking very close, like they shouldn't be pushing. We're not looking to push any more than a couple feet. When they're comfortable doing that, you shift your position so that you're just a little bit around the corner. Now the dog pushes. You send them and have them push, and they have to turn the ball a little. And then you just basically keep shifting your position more and more, sending your dog, having them to push the ball and having to bring it around and curve it to get to you until you can basically be straight on to that fence, send the dog, and they are now accustomed to going around the fence and picking up the ball. The idea here is we spend so much time initially teaching the dog to go out and get behind that ball. And if they do that when they're supposed to be picking up off the fence, they're in position to slam it into the fence. They're not in a position to pick it up. So what we want to train is we want to teach them how to go around and scoop it off the fence and bring it around. Um, I will leave it there. If somebody, we've got some, I think what we go to next. I'm going to flip through it. Right, that's the pin.
Do you put a different command to that?
I don't, but I know. Okay, so I didn't specifically. I don't have people do that in general, because what I'm not doing is I'm not sending them and telling them to line up. What I am doing is I'm sending them and I'm telling them to push. So as soon as they see that ball, they can round and push. They can go around and push that ball. What we have done with a couple dogs is some of our what I call monster pushers. We go around and they smack that ball so hard that they don't stand a chance of turning the corner and bringing it through the gate. Brenda's one we worked with. We teach them a nudge. We basically teach them to, instead of going out and smacking, we send them. I don't know, Brenda, are you still using the nudge, or did Jennings come around and
Yes,
finally?
I use the nudge, especially in the house and around home where we have limited space. But nudge is supposed to mean just touch it a little. Don't slam it with your full face and body. So, yeah, I do still try to incorporate it as an easy move and then get behind it.
Right, because Jennings is one. When he went around and picked up the ball, it would hit the fence. He'd hit it so hard it was gone to the fence. So we had to teach him to just give it a nudge and then come around and push the ball. Um, so there we do, when we want someone to slow down who doesn't naturally slow down, we did teach him a different cue there. But then we taught him a little different behavior too, a little poke. Lisa, did you have anything else that you, or Eric, Kyla, did you teach anything else for as far as picking the balls, teaching them to pick off the balls behind the fence?
I did exactly what you were saying, where not telling them to line up, sending them out when they're getting near the ball, tell them to push so that they're pushing it away from the fence. In the beginning, I used a weight if it was too hard, and have them stop, reline them up, and then have them push to me. Now it's turned into a send them out, a push, and then here. I use here to mean bring it right to me. Don't take the scenic route.
Who does that?
And this training plan never occurred to me, and Riley did. I wanted her to scoop it off. I didn't want her to try to push through the panel. So, but as I started working it, she just was too powerful and she would send it flying. So I don't have a separate lineup cue. My go out, my send cue is the lineup cue for me. So I had to let her line up and then teach her a side step. I would just lean and she would lean that way. And then I'd ask her to tap and then push.
That's
Tap,
cool.
tap it clear and then push it to me, which
It's good.
Yeah.
I chuck.
Yeah. No, I like that. Good one.
Anybody else have anything to add to that? Any other approaches to this?
I'm curious if you can go through quickly how you teach that nudge or tap.
Sure. So if you look at that, the first drawing, what we did is instead we basically stood, almost have to flip it, the dog and the human on the same side, and we at first just gave the dog the push cue. So we're both on the same side of the ball. You give them the push cue. They push it. The moment they make contact, you use your marker. Yes, good. Click, whatever you do. And you basically put the treat, you reinforce either right there beside you or you throw it back a little. And when you do that enough times, the dog starts predicting that you're not going to reinforce me for moving forward. And the taps the pushes get smaller and smaller because the reinforcement's going to be back beside you, or even thrown backwards behind you. So they start giving punier and punier pushes until they give you just a little and once they start giving you just little delicate pushes, that's when I name it, that's when we named it nudge or whatever you want to
Mhm.
say, easy something. So by reinforcing and keeping that reinforcement back, um, they just naturally give you less and less because it doesn't. It's funny. They get up to where like I'll just barely tap it because I want my cookie,
Mhm.
and it's great.
Mhm. Mhm. Sure.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Any other
There.
questions? Move.
We'll move on. Another one we have is training send to the pen. Lisa has given us some really cool pictures. I don't know if Lisa wants to talk through.
You have to
Did I
unmute yourself.
lose Lisa?
There
Uh
you
As long
go.
oh.
as my, yeah, as long as my internet keeps working, I'm happy to talk.
Okay.
So when send to the pen. I was like trying to remember what I'm talking about in this one. So I have these that's my cute little doggy, and he's sitting on a little pink target. When I send to the pen, I want my dog to go to that corner that's closest to the fence, because that will set them up for pushing it out of the pen as opposed to pushing, going behind the ball and trying to push it through the fence. So I train going to a target in a specific area there. And then you'll see I have a little target that has an H on it, a purple target. That's where I stand. And then the other one is really tiny. It's a little paw. That's where my doggy stands when I send them.
Okay. I
It's really
see.
cool. Um, and I did, I think, because my border collie is he has injuries in his spine, so I really don't want him hitting fences. So I did the same thing. I basically taught him first. I actually named it for him. Corner. I cued him to go to the corner before he ever thought about pushing a ball. So yeah, I love this setup. So this
And we
I
didn't even
included this
talk
one.
about that, Chris. We did exactly the same.
I know it's cool. It's like that's exactly what I did. How'd you know? So I like this picture too, and it comes up again for learning to drive the ball into the pin, but um, the idea of using gates to help if they're having any trouble, um, where to go, using gates to guide them. And I know that might not have been exactly where you were looking for the picture, but yeah, the first thing is just basically sending them into the pen. Um, and I love the mats. Um,
Mhm.
and so another way that we did it is besides having the mat, we also would do a thing where basically start here, basically dog and handler facing the ball and the mat, having the dog go get on the mat, and then push the ball out right there to the handler. When they're comfortable with that, start shifting, just basically through approximations, start shifting our start point further and further out so that we end up even with the sides of the pen and then outside the pen, finally back further and further, so that we're setting the expectation for the dog to go all the way around, get on the mat, get behind the ball, and then push the ball out. And the whole time often using a setup similar to this so that when they come out, if they have we help them get around that corner if they're one of the dogs that struggles to make that corner. Our wide pushing dogs who, as I say, turn like the 747s, um, jets. And I think we switch from here. So did anybody have anything else that maybe they did differently as far as teaching your dog to get the ball out of the pen? I'm pretty sure. Yes, we switched. Yes.
Lisa, what about that idea for the obtuse angles of the pen itself? Do you still do that?
Please elaborate. I'm not sure what you're asking.
At one point you sent me some drawings of the pen. Instead of it having right angles, you were using 4-foot sections, and you had the pen a little bit more of a circular shape.
Okay. Yeah, it totally depends on which of my dogs to how I would set up that angle there. I mean, I played with all different permutations. My one dog, Larson, did really well if I put a cone in, and so I was teaching him push to this cone first, then push to this cone, and that really resonated with him. My other one was like, the cones are stupid. So I tried different things with different dogs, and then I would change the angle of those guide gates depending on where my dog was at. I'd take one out, put another one in, really changing it day to day depending on what he needed.
Yes, and we, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. We would very much vary these gates depending on the dog. Um, and a lot of that just to keep the dog from, they come out of the pen. The last thing you want them to do is waste all their energy making a great big huge turn all the way out and around the field while they're still learning to control the ball and make those tight turns. So let them use those fences. But yeah, same thing. Depends on how much the dog, how much help they need while they're learning to turn that ball.
Yeah, my dogs are not naturally tight turners.
Hmm. Yeah,
They
I mean
like
we
the
have some.
scenic route.
Yeah, we've got some that are so tight it's like they turn on a dime, and then there's the others that take the scenic route a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
I think mine are pretty tight. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Tammy's turned nice and tight. Um, it's interesting watching the different dogs and how they control it. And some of it's the surface and the balls particularly. Are they on a fast surface? Or are they on grass? You know, I,
Mm-hmm.
just the surface of the ball, how well they can control it. There's a lot of factors that play into that. So okay, nowhere. I'll go on to the intermediate. The intermediate, you can see, there's the one of the field diagrams. They now have to retrieve a ball from the far pin. They have to retrieve a ball from the fence and come through the gate. And then the big thing is they have to drive a ball from the goal into the near pin. So that's really the big addition there. Skills, they need all the novice urban herding skills. They have to, their skill of sending out and pushing the ball needs to be increased to 40 feet or 40, more than 40 feet. They have to drive the ball away about 15 feet. We've found it's really good to have a stop moving cue. We can talk about that later why. And then it's awfully nice to be able to reposition, be able to have cues to be able to reposition the dog relative to the ball out on the field without returning to the goal. To be able to maneuver your dog. And that's one skill that just increases as you go through the levels. Training, send and retrieve the ball from the pen. It's basically just adding distance to what they could do in the novice level. So just incrementally increasing that distance. And then there's two techniques that we've got some pictures and things to go with. And one is using channels to train drive. So they can drive away from the handler. They can drive to the left, drive to the right, and then the other is placing the ball in the pin and attaching a particular cue for that. So this is one, I've got a drawing. One of the things we use to teach them to drive away from you or across is basically a channel, like many of us used when we first were teaching them to bring the ball to us. A lot of us use channels, but setting up some sort of fence-like barriers. But now you're going to put the ball at the start, and you're going to stand. You can stand right there beside them. For dogs that really know how to push the ball to you, I don't know. I found we often have to start with those that channel pretty tight to the ball because they are so inclined to go around the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. This is another drawing Lisa's set up for teaching the drive in the channel. You want to talk about what you have there, Lisa? He's like, I have to keep unmuting.
I know my internet connection keeps going in and out, so I'm going to do my best. I set it up so that I could train being on either side of the dog. You know, if I had 5 minutes just to go out there and practice either direction. I definitely saw that my dog was better one direction than the other. I started off by being at where the little purple H is to start, and then I approximated myself further and further away, you know, where you have next to the dog at the end, and then actually even further away from that, practicing so that I can do the drive from distances.
Very cool. Very cool. How about some of you guys who taught driving away or and we have stuff later for cross field, but in particular driving away out onto the field. I know we've got quite a few who've done that.
What helped me last winter was just using the hallway in my house as my channel and having the dog drive the ball away from me down the hall.
Excellent use of indoor spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Eric? I know I remember a video some time ago. You had I'm sure it had been Jet driving out around a cone and then bringing the ball back to you.
Yeah, that's correct. We started with, you know how you kind of had the concept of going into the pen where you're helping the dog kind of come around. You have those gates there to help your dog come around and be successful. We did a very similar thing as that. We just used very small channels, but we actually used channels in an L and then eventually almost into a U. So you have one gate in the middle and you have gates around it creating a U, so that the dog would drive the ball away, and then the channel would help the dog curve it, and then you would drive it back. So that we were helping kind of at the same run teach both behaviors, drive and come back. And then like everything, it's eventually you're just taking the gating away, right? Just leaving a cone.
Yeah.
Yeah, gates are our best friend.
Yeah, aren't they? Yeah, we use gates so much. What about cues? A cue that's just drive, anything that's away from you versus push, bring it in, or what are you guys doing?
Yes.
Good cover, Eric.
I mean, that's obviously our end goal. Yeah, and just to make sure that those two cues, because the behavior of driving the ball away and the behavior of bringing the ball to you are so similar, the cue that's associated with it should be different, vastly different. So I use drive because drive can be short, like drive, and push I can stretch out, like push. And she has a tendency to bring that back and differentiate those two behaviors. But
I know one of the things I've noticed is the difference teaching dogs. So my border collie, he had been pushing a ball for 4 years before I ever started teaching him a drive, and hadn't driven at all. And when we set up, especially the first couple times, to set him up so that all he had to do was just barely touch that ball with me beside him to get that first little push. Those were the hardest things I think I'd ever done, because he did everything in his power to get to the opposite side of the ball before he did anything. And I had to take the smallest behaviors. And when I look at some dogs who, Tammy, she's on the call, and teaching her dog who he'd only been pushing for a year and a half, I think, before you started to drive. And it was so much easier because
Mm-hmm.
he hadn't been pushing for 4 or 5 years before switching to the drive. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Right.
it was much easier
I
with
I think
can't
him.
figure
my
out the
uh,
difference between them.
Hmm.
my initial pause is it gets a little dicey when you start getting into like cross drives or into like banking the ball in, because now
Hmm.
you're asking the dog to flank, you're asking the dog to push the ball whatever direction we're on that flank, and where's the difference between the drive or the push or what? So it does get a little blurry.
Hmm. Right. I've actually started working Mickey, where I'm actually working partially. There's drive, but I also am working on teaching him directional, as far as if I've got him set up so that he would, I set him up so he's pushing to the left or right, and fixing my body position so that I'm indicating to drive to the left or drive to the right. Um, Incorporating
I've
my body position some in his position on the field. So, but that's further down. First, just
and I,
get
yeah,
away
and I
from it.
found that I'm really using drive anytime I'm asking her to push the ball, and I use push when I'm asking her to bring it to me.
Yep.
So that's what I'm finding myself incorporate more and more and more.
Yep. Very much. That's very much the way I've been. It's push, if it mean the ball should come to me.
Right.
Drive
Yeah,
is
no
some form
matter,
of drive.
as we were talking about going around that gate, right? As they're going around that gate and I say push, the dog's like, okay, that means bring the ball back. It's not
Right.
line up, it's just push. So, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. So you're
Mm-hmm.
incorporating that principle.
Hmm. Trying to stay consistent. Push always means bring it to me, no matter where you are,
So,
no matter where you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
so along those lines, I started with a little channel using my perimeter fence on my property and then some baby gates. And I set the ball up very close to the far end of the gate. And I sent my dog down the chute and I asked her to drive. At first, I started closer, but pretty soon she was willing to tap it. And then I reinforced that by asking her to push. You just have to tap it once, it's loose, push it to me.
Hmm.
And then I talked to some people, some friends who've done a lot of herding, and they had me take her for walkabouts basically around the perimeter of my property. So once she was pretty good at understanding drive, which is the cue I use for pushing it away from me, then we started taking walks where she would have a fence on one side and me walking alongside her on the other, and I would ask her to drive. And then I would just slowly hang back. I would
Mm.
hang back further and further. And then if she, she pushed it, she'd have this space where she'd, no, I have to go around it, okay. So that's where we had to work. And then, but then if she got it, if she gave me another push away from me, or I should say a drive away from me, then I might reinforce her either by food back closer to me to set her up to do another drive, or I might actually send her to fetch it, which I know some people do in herding to reinforce the drive with a push towards me. So that's
Yeah.
food for thought.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. I like it. A good way to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to flip forward. I can't remember what I have next.
And then the goal was to move further and further away from the fence, so she was actually controlling the ball a little more. And I have a very uneven yard, so that kind of happens naturally.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Herding her little sheep ball around.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Slipping on into training drive into the pen. These are some pictures again by Lisa. You can tell by the cute little H. I'm gonna let. And thank you, Lisa. I asked for more pictures today. she went right out and took them.
Oh.
I was like, it's all still set up. That'll be easy to do. So for this one, yes, H is the handler. And what I did was I used this really tiny ball there so you could see the cute little paw behind it. Otherwise, that's way too small of a ball, but I wanted to give you the gist. Just asking the dog, pretending that that's the goal and that the dog is bringing the ball towards you. And then you're approximating yourself, the second picture, the H moves over. So you're approximating yourself away from the goal or the pen. And then you keep approximating yourself over. So that's the back chaining part of it before you do the turn.
Yep, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So the dog gets used to the idea. The goal is to smack that ball into your little pen there, and getting you out of the picture.
And get lots of cookies.
And get lots of cookies. I think I've got.
And
so here's
practice on the left and the right. You can see.
Yeah, everything, like whether we've said it or not, is left and right. Do it both ways. And this is one where this drawing, sort of the same thing. The idea of having some sort of remote feeder in the back of the pen, so that we found that whether it's in the back or off in this corner over here, it helps the human get out of the picture. There, if the target is not drive the ball to the human, it's driving it to the back of the pen. And same sort of thing, starting behind the pen, and then when that's good, moving over to the side by approximation, just like Lisa's picture showed, and then starting to move the ball so that they have to actually control it more. So so the ball is further and further away from the entrance to the feeder or the pen.
The pen.
We can't show it here. We do have a link, and hopefully you can go back and later watch this. Tammy Harold put together a nice video showing. She has it's not exactly like it's sort of like this, and it shows using the wall and using some other fences as guidance, taking the dog through the steps of teaching that, driving into the pen, and adding a cue. So definitely encourage, if you want to watch just basically an approximation stepwise process of doing this. It's a very nice video.
I tend to use a lot more channels for more success and
Right,
getting them
right.
driving down and cornering in, kind of like in the other video or the other pictures earlier.
Right. Yeah, it's just using a lot of props to get the dog successful. One of the things that we've found through the dogs that have been training here is, once we get to this point, the picture on the far right where we've got the ball, it's basically not in line with the pin. They're going to have to push it out some before they make the turn and come into the pin. There's definitely a point where you realize the dog understands the goal, but they have to develop the skill to get there. And that's one of those times where I can only just encourage to practice, give the dog the opportunity to practice more, and keep sessions short, because we'll see that point. And sometimes the human part of the factor is like, oh man, the dog doesn't get it, and I'm like, no, the dog gets it. They're just still trying to learn how to dribble the basketball. They've got to practice getting that turn, and there just comes a point where you see the dog starts to drive it and try to get it there, and for some reason it goes and it bounces off the wall, it goes wide, they don't get it in the pin, and you'll see the dog stops. It's like, that didn't work, and encouraging the dog to go back and try again. But that's the point where I know the dog understands the goal, and they stop because it didn't work, and it's like, I failed. I've still got to get it there. And you can see the dog's wheels turning, and it's so cool. But the important point is not to give up on them then. It's not that they don't get it. They just need to practice some more and get their technique down. So sticking with them is so important.
I have a quick story. I reached out to Tammy because as a reviewer, I was watching her dogs with those tight turns, just coveting them. I also reached out to Chris and I was like, what do you do for a dog that has really like wide turns? And he turns wide in agility too, so I'm always battling it. But Tammy had told me that she had a setup that she put in her garage, and she just practiced, that muscle memory all winter for her dogs. I'm like, that is brilliant. It's like teaching weaves that muscle memory of what to do for it.
Yes. Yes. And it's just so important to the practice part. Just give them that chance to practice it. One of the things they did too is putting the ball all kinds of locations around the field, so that it gets to the point where, once I've added a cue bank, there's a ball out there. I can send my dog from just about anywhere, and he sees the ball and he goes, oh, I'm going to have to push it far to the right before I bank, or I've got to get the ball further out. And it's just basically setting up all the scenarios so that he can practice all of those. Practice. I think we forget how much they practice pushing the ball to us.
And I will add that before I agree with Chris that there's a point where they get the task, and that's, for a while I was struggling, and I like, she doesn't understand the task. I want her to think of it as a task. I don't want to micromanage her. I want to say, this is a task, you do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And tight turns weren't like this thing that I really cared too much about, so I didn't really practice that much. But I will tell you, the turning point for her was when I clicked her when the ball touched the side of the pen, the inside of the pen.
Yep.
I was trying to click and reward her when it passed the plane of the opening, because that's what matters in the game. But that, of course, was not tangible for her. Once I switched to clicking and rewarding when she got the ball to reach the far side of the pen, that's when it clicked for her.
Yes. Yep.
I think it's really important, that far side.
Yep.
Kyla, when you say the far side of the pen, are you talking about where the feeder is, or the field fence?
Any of the insides of, like, if there were already two balls in there or something and she could only hit it to the one side, that was fine. But until it made contact with something on the inside of the pen.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Very
in
much
the
so.
beginning, I like to focus where the feeder is, just to get it all the way in.
Yep. Yeah, and because especially if there's nothing else in the pen, we all sooner or later realize, you know what? I can't really, from the goal, I can't really tell if the ball's in the pen or not. But if it hits the back of the pen, I know.
Yeah, sure.
But so does the dog.
The bounce back issue if your dog is pushy.
Yeah. So you know what I started to do about that? I'd have, when Mickey would punch it in so hard, I'd have him lay down in the pen.
Oh.
it hit it. I go, Mickey, down. And he'd lay down and he'd block it.
Well, sometimes if you know they're close, you can then use your tap or nudge or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I agree, Kyla. That is such an important point. They need something tangible to know they've completed the
Mm-hmm.
chore. So true. Any other tips on that? And you know, I can tell you if you don't have a feeder, um, which in my dirt barn I can't use the feeders because they don't like that dirt. Um, I used a little bigger treat so that even though I had tall fences, um, as soon as that ball hit one of the sides or the back, I marked and I threw a treat. It soared to the sky and it fell in the pen. And I knew I was getting somewhere because I would mark, before I even marked, the ball would hit the back and Mick's nose would go to the sky. It's like, treat should
Mm-hmm.
fall from the sky now.
Yeah,
Like,
it should
you
happen.
got the chore. You understand. All right. Any more tips for driving into the pen? One of the things I think
Don't be
a lot of,
afraid to,
go ahead.
I was going to say, don't be afraid to change your guide gates. At one point, my gates were in a very weird position. I'm not going to be able to explain this. If the ball got into a certain position, Larson would go around it to start pushing it back to me. And so I had to really change where my fences were so that he wouldn't get into that position because it was patterning too much. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, I went back to this one because sometimes we used to set up like this, maybe some more space for the opening, but actually had the pen and had this arch of fences so that basically we could practice going in from either side. But there was this nice U shape of fences to help guide the balls in. But we could flip back and forth. But yeah, definitely use those fences until they get that memory.
Yeah, the fences are your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
I was
guys,
also going to say, most of us, we added new cue to mean put it in the pen
yeah, I was
and
just going to
bank.
say that
Oh,
the bank cue,
yeah.
and I started
Bank.
using it after after he started getting rewarded in the back of the pen,
Yes.
and started to understand that. Then I added the bank cue, and then as he got more experienced, when he got drove the ball within about 15 feet of the pin I was wanting him to put the ball in, I would switch from drive to bank, which
Yes.
goes to Kyla's point about the task being now put the ball in the pin.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. When do you switch from drive to bank? Yep. Very good. Anything else on that? Putting them in pen? All right. You sure we're going to switch? Yep. We're going to switch to advanced. The advanced, there's one of the field setups. There are variations of that. Now they have to retrieve a ball from the far pin and put it in the goal. They have to also retrieve a ball from a far pin and put it in another pen. And then they have to bring that proverbial ball from the far fence and come through the gate to the goal. So the big difference is still all the intermediate urban herding cues, but they have to be able to drive a ball across the field. So now we're talking cross drives. So, I mean, that's the biggest change going from intermediate to advanced. And Lisa, again, went out and shot some more pictures today. Once again, she sent this picture and went, "Oh my God, this is just exactly what we've been using." So Lisa, go ahead. Talk about your cross drive pictures.
So the first picture is a pen, it's a far pen setup, and then I just took some other gates and set up another pen and linked them together. So I'm asking him to pull that ball out of the first pen and then bring it over and deposit it in the second pen. And then what I've done is changed the angles of it. So the pens in the beginning were right across from each other. Then they're here, you know, and playing back and forth. The second picture is starting to add gaps in between the gates so that you're starting to fade out your gates.
Really cool. And again, it's that same idea as
Larson loves.
Yeah, the idea is, again, you're giving that dog an endpoint.
And Larson.
Kyla, did you do anything different for the cross drive? Eric? Kyla?
No, and it took me a long time to break down and use fences. By golly, I didn't want to use them.
Oh
And
no.
then it was so easy, and then it helped so much that I would say, don't waste your time. Just start with fences and get over yourself. Like,
I love it, Kyla.
Yeah.
Yes, fences are your friend.
I don't have a specific cross drive cue though, and that's something I'm curious about what you guys might have set up. I use body language a lot since we're allowed to innate. The way I stand is a cue. So I'll be curious what you guys all came up with.
I know Tammy, because I remember talking with Tammy. Tammy, what did you do?
I use clock and counter for mine. I use come by and away normally, so clock and counter actually means push it to the opposite side of the field, whether it's clockwise or counterwise.
Yeah, so you put your cross drives basically on different cues than what you've used for anything else.
Correct.
And you have some very beautiful cross drives. Very straight.
And I definitely use the fences.
Oh yeah, you definitely, and you use your body position some too, don't you?
I do. When I give the commands, I actually move to that side of the handler box and turn my whole body sideways as I'm doing it, so they can read my body and the cue at the same time.
Andy, what about you? What are you using for cueing?
I did not use the fences because I didn't have enough to do it anyway. So I relied heavily on body language. I'm very directionally challenged in terms of terms. So if I say something right, go right, you probably should turn left. So I tried not to use any of that terminology. So I used body language in the full width of the handler box. I would turn my body and kind of walk the direction I wanted Chase to be pushing the ball. And for the most part, he got it. Sometimes he got the ball going kind of a weird angle that I'd have to reset him to keep the drive going. But we got there.
Eric, I don't remember what even though I've watched all your videos, I can't remember. What do you do?
Well, we started more with body language, but because again, I didn't use gates as far as cross drive goes as well in the beginning. But we really struggled because when Jet would go past that natural point, it would go back into a recall, and so our cross drives would break down. So I've gone back and started to retrain it with the fences, and it's coming along a lot faster and a lot easier. So
Fences, man, the fences.
I like the concept of putting both cross drives on two different cues. I like that. I hadn't thought about that, so there's something I might steal.
Very cool. Yeah, and I don't remember. I think it was Tammy who said we were talking, and she said, you know, or maybe it was Sandy. So I'm sorry if I'm mixing it up. How once they start getting it, they just seem to understand. Like once you've trained, once you get them understand, they're like, oh no, I got this now. Um,
Yeah, that was what I witnessed. Once they got the concept of drive and bank, going up the levels then was not all that challenge. I mean, I won't say it wasn't challenging, but it went a lot quicker than I ever anticipated it would. And I thought I
yeah.
was seeing the same thing when, you know, I was watching Tammy's come in and Kyla's too, that those next two levels just boom, boom.
Because I can quote Sandy as we're just going to get our novice outstanding because the rest will never happen.
Uh-huh.
And then it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the
Boom,
exact
boom,
quote too.
boom.
I think the drive was the slowest thing learning. Once you get that, everything else just falls into place.
Yeah, one of the keys for Chase and I was when Chris started putting the feeder in the back of the pen in our practice sessions to bank the ball into the pen. That made a world of difference to, I mean, like 2 or 3 sessions and he had it.
Mm-hmm.
That motivation, that motivation thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what? So I'm gonna because I'm pretty sure next slide. Yep, we go to expert. Um, so we don't have anything specifically in here, but I'm going to see if somebody. I mentioned it. I believe on the. Well, here we go. Intermediate skills, and we never talked about it again. Um, there's two things we didn't talk about. You know, a stop moving cue.
Oh.
I think I saw almost everybody. I know I've used it when the dog's out there. You're trying to make things happen. Just having a really clear stop, you know, and so you can reposition them. Train positively so that it's not a punishment. It's just I need you to stop. Um, And then the other thing was being able to reposition your dog relative to the ball without calling them into the goal. And I think I've seen almost every one of the advanced and expert videos that was done. Kyla, all of you guys, did you if you could talk a little bit about how you did that, how you taught your dog's out on the field, you've stopped them because the ball's not going where you want, and then you cue your dog to move so they're in a different position to the ball. Did you guys specifically train that?
Um, I'll go ahead and start really fast, and I'll say that not pushing the ball is one of my foundation pieces for just Treibball foundations. Pushing the ball is a lot of fun. Not pushing the ball sucks.
Yeah.
So you really need your dog to understand that not pushing the ball is just as fun. So we do a lot of that lining up. The dog lines up on the ball, and then we call them off the same direction. The dog lines up on the ball, we call them off opposite direction. The dog lines up on the ball, and we push. So we already are kind of getting the feel of our body on how we pull the dog off either direction. That naturally just gives itself, you know, to the higher level games when you're asking your dog to say, come off this direction, right? Let's go this way, or let's go this way, you know. So, and then once the dog understands how to come off, as soon as you say drive, the dog should be driving the ball. So I come off, I hit drive, and the dog's driving. So.
Cool. Cool beans. Anybody else?
To me, I'm going to put a plug in for the skills directional cues because that was, in my opinion, very key. Being able to move your dog between balls or cones or whatever, and it being, you know, a lot of positive reinforcement in that very early training. And of course, that leads into balls in order, where again, you need to be able to call your dog off pushing the wrong ball into the goal. So Chase came into urban herding with a lot of good background skills from those early training periods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think there's a transition piece that where the dog, if they've got the really good foundations, I know I didn't specifically train Mickey so that, for urban herding, so that when I send him out, if he's pushing or driving somewhere where it's not going right, where I can stop him, I can away or come by him around the ball and tell him to stop and then continue whatever, drive, push, whatever I want him to do. And he rather naturally, I didn't specifically teach him moving around the ball and stopping exactly where I told him to. He was in the beginning, he was taught, to go out and line up on the ball so he could bring it in. But because we'd worked so much once we added the drive and we added, we put it together with the ways and combines and he suddenly seemed to understand where she stops and then she tells me to drive. I stop right there and now I move. It was interesting to watch him pull all those together without me really training putting them together. I guess I felt a little guilty. But it was all the pieces being there and solid, and he was able to reassemble them.
Cool.
All right, let's see. Let's go the last one. Okay, Lisa and I talked earlier. We laughed about this. Expert. The tasks are move 4 balls to the correct places, and there's 4 starting places. And as we talked, it doesn't really take any new skills. It's all the advanced urban herding skills. You have to push the ball at least 50 feet. You've got to drive away or across the field for 40 plus feet. And you need really strong understanding of the directional cues on the field. Because it's basically everything in advanced, only more and harder. It's nothing new. It's just more.
More.
So it's just that incremental adding more distance, adding more space type things. How about you guys who've actually got the expert title? Do you agree with that?
I agree
Very
with
much
that.
so.
You feel like you had to train it? Yeah, it was just
I think the
harder.
hardest one was pushing the 4 balls out of the U
In the center of the field.
line
Yep.
because there was so limited room in that area compared to the others that it took a different skill set for me.
I agree with that, Tammy. That was the one that was the most different, I think, because we often teach a lineup in when we're training for other games. So the 4 in the middle didn't seem all that different, except you have to be able to push them somewhere. But the 4 in the pen, that wasn't super hard, but it was like you had to think about how am I going to approach this.
I could see.
Yeah, you have no idea. Yeah.
I can say I chased his face when I sent him out to a pin with 4 balls. He was kind of like, what the, trying to figure out how he was going to maneuver in there.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Chase pushes small balls.
Yeah. I can't
Kylie,
imagine
are you
larger balls.
medium? Are you medium or large balls with Riley?
65 centimeter balls.
Yeah, and and
Oh, yeah.
Tammy's are mediums. So there's not that much space in the pen when there's
Well,
4 balls in there.
And when the rules first came out, I thought it was this specific ball goes in this specific place. The one that was in the corner has to go there. And so I was really freaking out when I first read the rules. But
Well, you did some of the you were able to get in some of the ones that we removed later, where you were one of your runs where you had all 4 balls in the goal and you had to take them out different places, and that was pretty cool to watch. That was nice.
I liked the one with the ball way out in the far corner. I screwed it up for her, but I liked that one a lot.
Yeah. So, and those are all legitimate. You could go to a trial and it's all legitimate. that could be the task. Those could happen.
Yeah, and I like the way Tammy had her dog sometimes bump the four in the row, split them from a drive instead of splitting them from a pull, a push towards
Uh-huh.
her, so
Yeah.
that they would go out and then she could send to different places. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. That was very cool.
We were pretty good about picking the top two off. When we got down to the bottom two of them, I just had them break them up so I could get whichever one in the right spot with my clock and counter.
Yeah, that was neat.
Well, I'm going to say that is the last slide. Oh, so expert training.
Oh.
It's not telling you anything that isn't on the drawings. It's just what the goals were. So that is the last slide. So
Okay.
now we're up to, does anybody have anything else to add or ask questions?
Or questions, right.
It's worth it to get to expert level, and actually the one before it, right? No, expert level, because then you get rid of all those silly gates and you got this nice big space to work with again. It's worth it.
I have a question about the pens. We play on a field that doesn't actually have walls around the sides. So for the pens, would we need to enclose the whole field, or would we just make U-shaped pens so that there was a gate on the outside of the pen? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yep. Yes. My first answer would be just make U-shaped pens. I mean,
Okay.
that would because you don't play with side barriers. You're on an open field, so
Right.
yeah, you just
Yeah.
make U-shaped pens.
Okay, perfect.
Debbie,
Thank
I'm
you.
about to release a training tip for September that
yeah.
talks about how to create video trialing fields. And the ones I created for Chase do not have tall sides. So you can see how what I did for my urban herding setups. But I actually
Awesome.
utilized some tunnels to help make the walls just a little taller on either side of the pen itself.
Because I think you play on actually on an open field, don't you? I can't see the
Asking
people.
Debbie.
I don't know who asked the
It
question.
was Debbie. Debbie
Oh,
asked
this
questions.
is
Debbie.
Debbie,
yeah, this
yeah,
was Debbie and Adam. Yeah, we play on
gotcha.
it's a pretty open field. Yeah, we've got the fence along the goal side, but that's kind of all we've got. We've got kind of a
Right.
grassy area on one side, but it's still not very solid. So I just wondered how we were going to do that because we're really looking forward to starting urban herding next summer.
Cool. Yeah. And you'll have some challenges because they won't have the whole side fence wall to play off of when they're trying to get into
Right.
to get the balls into the pen, um, but I'm sure you'll overcome it once they get the steering down. It'll happen for you.
Yeah, that's what winter's going to be all about, working on steering.
Steering. I
Yeah.
have to throw. We have a video. We were talking. Um, Lisa mentioned her dog not getting around the ball, and we have a labyrinth thing that we built, and I know Sandy videoed what we did once in class a couple weeks ago. We can throw that up along with the drawing of basically having the dog work the ball through a labyrinth that they have to get around the ball to so kind of the same thing, helping them think through and learn how to steer. um, we'll have to get that out.
Yeah.
Well, all of this has been really great because I've needed some tips on how to kind of get started on like drive and bank and everything. So this has just been absolutely awesome. I'm actually on vacation in Wisconsin right now listening to this.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you could.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and if like on the Facebook or whatever, if you have questions, post them. Everybody's happy to talk, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great community to ask questions. I really appreciate all of it.
Good.
We don't have a lot of players up here in Manitoba, so it's been it's been a challenge, but we're having a lot of fun.
You guys are
Good.
coming along beautifully.
Yeah.
I'm impressed at how
You're
far
good.
along we came, and the same as my friend Brenda and Eddie and her other dog Daisy. Like they've come up really fast too.
I love it because you guys are playing. Okay, so the one's a corgi, all right, but a Dalmatian and a Vizsla. And it's like, there we go. Don't
Right.
tell me they have to be herding dogs.
I
Look at
know.
that.
Yeah.
They look great. They look great. It's awesome.
All right. Any more questions or comments? This has been really good. Really appreciate everybody's contributions and participation. And again, this will be on the members only page where you can, replay it and especially like look at the PowerPoint. So you don't forget some of the good stuff here.
Yep, I should get the link in a couple of days.
Okay.
Often it comes, usually comes within 24 hours. And then I
Yeah.
have to get the link up in the Clubhouse chat archives. So
Right.
we'll get that up for everybody.
Okay. Well, great. If nothing else, we can say goodbye till next time.
All right.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everybody. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right.
Thanks, everybody. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks,
Uh-huh.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.